White text over video of past events. Logo, Cultural Access Collaborative. Professional Development Series presents Lead Conference ShareOut 2025. At left, presentation slides. All content will be voiced. At right, stacked mini videos of presenting speaker and ASL interpreter.
Hello and welcome to our Lead Conference ShareOut 2025, presented by the Cultural Access Collaborative. My name is Alejandra Rodriguez, and I'm a steering committee member with the Collab. Due to the technical difficulties, this introduction was missed during the recording of the event, so we have recreated it here. We currently have captions only displayed, however, ASL interpretation will resume momentarily for the rest of the video. I use she/her pronouns, and I'm a Latina person in her early 30s with glasses, shoulder-length brown hair, and wearing a black t-shirt with beaded strawberry earrings. For those of you not familiar with the Cultural Access Collab, our mission is to empower Illinois' cultural spaces to become more accessible to visitors with disabilities. There are 4 primary pillars central to our work, and those include free professional development workshops, an accessible equipment loan program, and an accessible event calendar, and our growing statewide network.
So our program today includes real-time captioning provided by Efficiency Reporting, as well as ASL interpretation provided by First Choice Interpreting. If you'd like to view captions in a separate browser, you can do so using the stream text link included in the chat. We encourage you to submit questions for our presenters using the Q&A feature. If you have any challenges with accessibility, please reach out to our support team via the chat function. In case you find the chat pop-ups bothersome, you can turn off Show Chat Previews by clicking the caret next to the chat button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Next slide, please.
LEAD, Leadership Exchange in Arts and Disability.
All right, now I'm going to pass it over to Bill, who's also joining us from the Collab.
Great. Thank you so much, Alejandra, and welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you seeing today. My name is Bill Green. I'm a co-chair with the Cultural Access Collab. I'm a white man in middle age with dark hair and beard. I'm wearing glasses, and I'm sitting in my home's basement today. I wanted to give a little context if you're new to LEAD, just kind of what the conference is, what to expect. We expect that our audience today might have some experience, but might be curious about what this is. So the Leadership Exchange for Arts and Disability, or LEAD conference, is an annual conference hosted by the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. Its goal is to bring together cultural administrators from a wide range of organizations each year, best practices, new ideas, and make art and culture accessible for people with all disabilities. LEAD is intended as a meeting place for administrators, artists, and anyone passionate about access advocacy to come together, learn from each other, and bring new ideas and best practices back to their communities. And it's really for people at any stage of the accessibility journey. People are just beginning out in their organization to people who have a wide range and many years of experience in the field. We're thrilled today to actually bring some folks from all over Illinois who attended LEAD conference this year to share their insights, takeaways, reflections, and questions with you. If you're interested in LEAD, I recommend going to the Kennedy Center's website, but also you can go ahead and think about attending the next LEAD conference. It will be August 10th through the 14th in Philadelphia, and we hope to see you all there. I will pass it back to Alejandra.
Thanks, Bill. We'd like to now hand the program over to our guest speakers, who represent many different types of organizations here in Illinois, and get some of their impressions, takeaways, and exciting questions after attending LEAD. Our speakers today are Craig McNabb, Chile Ochoa, Diamond Warren Tucker, and Bill Green. First, I'll hand it over to Craig McNabb, who is the Audience and Access Services Manager at the Harris Theater.
This is Bill, jumping on again. This is the fun of doing live performance. Craig let me know he's having a technical issue, so why don't we come back to Craig and let Chile take over right now, okay?
Sounds great. So this is Alejandra speaking. We're going to just skip forward a little bit for right now. And the first speaker today will actually be Chile Ochoa, who is the Community Impact and Strategy Manager at Forward Doc, Filmmakers with Disabilities. Thanks, Chile.
Hi, everybody. Apologies for the delay. This is Chile speaking. I have an older laptop, so it's taking a second to click on anything. So I apologize in advance. Hi, my name is Chile. I use they, them pronouns. I am working with Forward Doc, which is short for Filmmakers with Disabilities, and I am the Community Impact and Strategy Manager here at Forward Doc. So even though we are based here in Chicago, we are a global organization. We're a global and intersectional network that works with disabled filmmakers and non-disabled allies who are working in the film and media landscape. The presentation slide in front of you possibly has a title saying Building a Culture of Accessibility in Film and Media. This was the framework in which I attended LEAD, which was not my first time this past year. I think it's my second time. But the reason I'm framing it in this way is because I'm operating from a film and media landscape. And so therefore, a lot of the sessions that I attended were also, entering from that headspace. The slides are pretty simple, it's just white background with a couple gradient circles, one of which is yellow, another is blue, and then the other one is red. So this will be pretty consistent across all the slides, and I will be describing them as well. On this slide, you will also have my email if you're interested to reach out to me after the fact. It's chile@forwarddoc.org, Chile at fwd-doc.org. I'm also happy to post that in the chat. Next slide. I see myself frozen and I'm a little nervous about that.
Hey, Chile, this is Alejandra speaking. You're not frozen to me. You're looking
Okay.
good. And we're at the slide that starts with sample sessions at the top.
All right, I'm just going to operate accordingly then. I'm glad things are working. So I might ask you to verify that because everything's frozen for me. On to the next slide. This one should say sample sessions. And I just wanted to preview real quick what sessions I attended so you have a general sense as to why I'm sharing what I'm sharing. So the first one being welcome begins at the job posting. The reason I wanted to attend this one is because I wanted, I'm in the process of working with future contractors and also creating the building blocks to hire and grow the organizations, which means hiring disabled creatives with Forward Doc. And so I think it's really important for us to think about the language we use when we're communicating a gig with anybody. The other session that I also attended, granted, these are not an exhaustive list, I attended more than 4, but this is just a sample, is playing language as a tool for accessibility. Unfortunately, language is not unfortunately, fortunately, language is a very complicated tool, but a beautiful tool. However, there are communities that have specific reading levels, and we need to be mindful in how to communicate our messages in a way that is accessible to everyone, including different reading levels. Another session I attended was the accessibility that goes wrong. I think this session was more focused on the ways that organizations and people make attempts to make their events accessible, but sometimes things happen. And so what can we do to learn from those experiences and adapt accordingly? For a little further transparency, this session was a lot more focused on public film screenings. So I will be speaking a little bit on that front. And the last one was more on how to craft accessible display designs, mainly because when you're attending an event, or in my case, a film festival or producing a film festival, things you have to consider is directional signage, what font is being used, how do you want to display the information, what kind of information do you want to share? These are considerations to think about when organizing any kind of event. So these are the ones that I was really focused on. So let's go to the next slide. So this slide is focused on 3 quick snapshots. There are 4 categories, so to speak, or actually 3, the fourth one being an image of a person holding a film camera over their shoulder. But the first 3 are big picture snapshots of what I've learned, but I'm going to just start on the left side where we're focusing on integrating accessibility from the start. I recognize that carving out finances for accessibility can be burdensome sometimes, especially for nonprofits or grassroots collectives. There's not a lot of funding, and so therefore there is concern around how much money to set aside. That said, The disability community is incredibly generous. Community arts organizing is incredibly generous with their knowledge and their time and their resources. And so there are ways for you to think about how to layer in accessibility in your projects, in your ideas, without necessarily breaking the bank. But here are some little snippets that I have for you in terms of film and media, right? Even when you're in the script stage, you can start thinking about what captioning would look like on the screen as
Chile's video stops.
Chile, this is Alejandra speaking. I don't know if you went on mute or dropped out. Perfect, you're back.
Hi, I apologize for that. Hi, everybody. This is Chile again, jumping right back into it. And so, yes, so the first column, I'm focusing on integrating accessibility from the beginning of your planning stages. So beyond working with local artists who are already thinking about creating signage from an accessibility perspective, you could just think about using specific fonts that are most accessible, for example, Verdana, using fonts that are above 12, ideally 14. This is kind of my slides, for example, are an example of that. It's also important to start, if you have the funds, for example, even if it's a small budget, layer in contingency funds in your planning. So let's just say you have a film screening event coming up and you're expecting about 100 people to come through, it's good to start thinking about how much money you want to set aside in case someone reaches out for an access request. It could be $500, it could be $1,000. Honestly, it's really hard to predict what people would need, but it's better to have some funds set aside for that, so that way you can jump in and support this person in the ways that you're able to. Alternatively, is leaning on your peers to strategize ways so that you can improve the accessibility of an event when an access request comes in. The next category is be clear and prioritize plain language. Oh, let's go back to the previous slide. Yeah, I'm still in the same slide. The second category here is be clear and prioritize plain language. And so this is good for anyone who's in design or in communications. In the body, I say here, simplify language across materials to reach readers with diverse literacy and cognitive needs. This is particularly important because you don't want your messaging to get lost in the sauce. And also, if we're thinking about how folks are digesting information, it's rapid fire. And so the attention spans are changing as well. So thinking about how we can make, our event description shorter, but to the point, or even the titles of our events straight and to the point, including accessibility information, simplified and to the point. That's always beneficial for folks. The third category I have here is embed accessibility into policies and organizational values. Baby steps, right? Something I have in the body here is develop policies that make accessibility a core value across all departments and partnerships. I think it's important to model your own values for others to learn from, and that includes your partners. In the case of Forward Doc, we're particularly mindful of setting boundaries with anyone who comes to us for a relationship or a partnership when they haven't necessarily done the work to improve their accessibility standards. And so we rely on that opportunity to encourage them and expose them to disability justice articles and literature, and even, encouraging them to integrate accessibility from the start, so that way they can reach a point where we do want to partner with them. So I think it's important to set that boundary, so that way your organization remains true to that value, while also ensuring that others can see and benefit from incorporating accessibility in their work. Next slide, which is the last slide. My last quick snapshots across 3 more categories. The first one being encourage learning and staff training. Everyone's in a different place of learning, and that includes accessibility. And so if you have the bandwidth to layer, or you can contract this out actually, is to train staff on accessibility within their role. Although, yes, it would be lovely for everyone to know all about accessibility standards in all areas, it's okay to just focus on what your role actually is. So, for example, accessibility from an operations perspective. I'm just thinking, if you're an operations staff person for a film festival, for example, you will be thinking about the placement of signage, but maybe not necessarily the designing of it. Maybe you have to think about where you want the AV crew to be at without necessarily creating a barrier on a sidewalk at a public park if you're showing a film at a public park. For marketing, it would be like the plain language, for example, that would be a really good training opportunity for a marketing person, in addition to exploring how to create image descriptions for any graphic that they create, or even simplifying their graphics. So that way it's not overwhelming the audience or anyone who's exploring that marketing material, and so on and so forth. There's always people that are facilitating accessibility workshops. And so if you need help researching that, I have some recommendations. I'm sure the CAC also has recommendations. They're an incredible resource, so you already have that in your back pocket. The second category here is engage with disabled audiences and community. And when I say that, it's more from a place of intention. Don't just go from a place of transaction, go with the intention of actually building a relationship with them and expecting that relationship to grow over time. Unfortunately, we live in a world where people only approach relationships in a transactional way, which is very disheartening. But in this case, like I think it's really critical to be thoughtful about it, especially right now. Community is super important. Without community, we wouldn't have what we need in our lives, and we wouldn't be able to produce the events that we want to produce. So partner with disability orgs, communities for resources, feedback, and best practices while prioritizing a long-term relationship with them, because they will help you keep you in check, right? And the last quick snapshot that I have for you is creative feedback and improvement loop. We're always growing and learning, and also things change. I can only speak from like a queer and trans community perspective, or the LGBTQ community perspective, where some words that were used back in the day were a no-go, whereas today some of them are okay to use depending on the context. And so there are some practices, words, and elements that change over time based on the cultural context of that period. So it's important to be flexible and regularly adapt practices based on audience feedback and evolving standards. And it's good to do that once a year, every 2 years, especially when it comes to programs. I would say every year. Yeah. So those are my quick snapshots of the things that I had learned at Lead. Some of it was very validating, other was new, but nonetheless, I think it's still important to cement this knowledge as I go along my work at Forward Doc.
Thank you so much, Chile. This is Alejandra speaking again. As a reminder for everyone, if anyone has any questions along the way for any of our speakers, you are welcome to drop any questions that you have in the chat, and we'll try to get to it during our Q&A portion towards the end. Next up, we have Diamond Warren Tucker, who is the program manager at Joel Hall Dancers and Center.
New slides show white text on black background with spots of color. Key takeaways.
Hello, everyone. My name is Diamond Warren Tucker, and I am the program manager of Joel Hall Dancers and Center. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am a Black woman with a brownish cheetah, a brown and dark brown cheetah print beret on, as well as a brown jacket and purple glasses. So a couple of things that I took away from my lead experience. This was the first time that I had the opportunity to participate in the conference. So that was really exciting as a result of receiving a grant from the Illinois Art Council, Illinois Council of the Arts. I believe I said that correctly. So it was just a great learning and network experience overall for me. And one of the biggest things that I took away with that was co-creation with the disability community. So a little bit of what Chile mentioned in her slides, instead of just thinking of creating programming for disabled groups as opposed as a way to, fulfill some kind of grant reporting, or even just coming from a place of optics, as opposed to really engaging with the community in an intentional way, making sure to have those meaningful conversations, establish those respectful relationships, and be humble in your curiosity. And one of these sessions that I visited when I was there, it didn't have to do with disability, but specifically with education institutions, re-engaging with Native communities in the United States. that kind of left me with that kind of feeling, and also wanted to approach engaging with disabled communities with that same practice. Um, so that was really eye-opening for me, leading into my second point about being mindful and considerate of their caregivers, of the caregivers of disabled participants. So essentially thinking not just and arranging programming around disabled people, but also thinking of the people that take care of them, because their caregiver oftentimes have a better understanding of their needs. So being sure to be inclusive in any programming or accessibility measures, getting their input on what would be great for transportation or parking needs or any other kind of event planning logistics. Um, and they're also just the best to engage when doing this kind of program, because they understand client needs, what resources are available, or an idea of resources that they would like to see for the members of their community. And then lastly, plain language to promote equity. Again, just a little bit what going off just with a little bit of Chile said, um, plain language is definitely helpful in reducing the barriers to accessing information, not just for members of disabled community, but for the for the larger public in general. Especially being mindful of the fact not everybody is stationed in the same place educationally, financially, or social wise. And so having that cultural context and that competency to really understand who your audience is and what they're interested in to better inform your writing. Go on to the next slide. Some other key takeaways that I got, but really in so thinking about how I can apply information that I learned at Lead to my position, using audio description for dance. I had the opportunity to speak with a few panelists that have either worked with dance companies or different studios, and they were able to provide me resources. And funny enough, there is a dance organization in North Carolina that works exclusively with disabled people and also creates programming around that. And essentially, when working with audio description and dance, it takes on a way more technical and anatomical approach, which makes storytelling that much more accessible as well for disabled creators and viewers. So it calls on the choreographer and the creative director, and also just the dancers in general, to not just have a good understanding of their body, but a great understanding of their art so that they can communicate that to a variety of viewers, regardless if they are able-bodied or not. Um, Also, another thing that I really appreciated about the lead conference was the variety of sessions to choose from. At first, it was definitely a little bit overwhelming because I didn't realize that my first day that sessions were happening concurrently. So I found myself trying to bounce between one session and another. But a few of the sessions that I had the opportunity to participate in were accessibility for temporary events, where to start, what to do, and how to keep going for your success. In that session, we mainly talked about, what would it look like to plan events with accessibility considerations, excuse me. So being able to identify timelines, locations, what will the building structures look like, either whether it's indoor or outdoors, what are the procedures and protocol that the planning team as well as the organization that you're working with need to be aware of. um, and then another session that I did that I took a lot from was the session about missing, murdered, and Indigenous women and girls. That was my first time hearing about that organization, as well as what's been going on in Native communities across the nation. Um, and that definitely shook me up a little bit, in seeing how, their fight, getting access to food, water, even just having their voices heard, that's an accessibility issue in and of itself. So that was just really eye-opening for me. And then last but not least, just experiencing the openness of and networking with different attendees was really awesome. I don't know why, even though this is a national conference, but I wasn't expecting to meet anyone from Chicago. But the attendees from Chicago that I did meet, I actually have been able to connect with them after the concert and just share ideas, and even just get together casually. So it's just been really great expanding my network in that way and also expanding my knowledge. So
New slide reads, "Thank you."
Hi, this is Alejandra speaking. Thank you so much, Diamond. Next up, Craig, are you feeling good to be our next person?
I think we're ready if you can hear me.
I can hear you. So next up, we've got Craig
Awesome.
McNabb, who is the Audience and Access Services Manager at the Harris Theater.
New slide.
Hi, thanks, Alejandra. Thank you all so much for having me. My name is Craig McNabb. My pronouns are he, him. I am a white male in my early 30s with sort of long-ish hair that's kind of swooped back and dark. I also wear glasses and have a beard. I am sitting in my living room, enjoying listening to all the wonderful share outs about lead in this session. So perfect. Well, I think we can swap over to slide number 2.
Title: Access grows through relationships. List: Trust builds access. Progress happens through conversation. Relationships make inclusion lasting. Connection matters most.
The sort of direction that I decided to take with this is the third year that I have gone to lead over the last 4 years. And I've kind of, I think, figured out a way, at least for me, that works well to approach the conference. So I figured I would explain my share out in that sort of format. So generally, I'm kind of looking at the sessions as either being something that is on, really on, brand or like in the exact field that I'm working in. So I work for the Harris Theater for Music and Dance. So those would be sessions that are led by folks that are theater industry professionals. But obviously, this is a conference that has a lot of other folks from other cultural organizations. So I also try to think about what sessions can I go to that are maybe somebody that is doing something that I am not familiar with, or something that might offer an interesting perspective that will help to solve problems in a way I hadn't thought of before. So the first session that I'd like to talk about is a session that was led by members of the disability community that was structured like a theatrical performance in 3 acts. And they talked about what their experiences were like entering a building, being there for a performance, and then exiting the building. And one of the huge takeaways that I took away from that session is one of the leaders of the session said something to the effect of how frustrating it can be when you attend performances at a space over and over again. And the problem that they maybe have, or whatever sort of like access need they may have, may be solved for them in that moment. But when they come back to attend another performance, that need needs to be solved again if it hasn't been communicated. So one of the things that we're implementing now at the Harris in order to sort of open up that line of communication and assist patrons with needs, we've sort of implemented this idea that if someone comes into our space once, we should, and we solve an accessibility issue for them, we should know that ability, that accessible need, and we should note it and be prepared for them when they purchase a ticket for another performance. So we're training all of our front of house staff on how to interact with patrons and collect that information as we're reseating patrons, especially with reseating in a theater that often is one of the largest accessibility needs that patrons just don't necessarily communicate in advance. So making sure that we have notes on those sorts of things is something our staff is being trained to do. We have sheets in near all of the seating areas that staff can record those things and then communicate them to our house management team, and then note things for those patrons so that we can assist them next time they come into the building. We're also working with our marketing department to develop some materials that we can give to folks when they do use an accessible service, just to inform them of the other accessible services that we offer and how they can sign up for them in the future. Hoping to really just create sort of a feedback loop where we can communicate with them and they have opportunities and options to communicate with us. So that was a huge takeaway from that lead session. It was one tiny little nugget of a thing that turned into a whole idea that I was able to get some buy-in from our operations department. And we're really excited to see how that plays out. We can move to the next slide, please.
Title: Speaking so everyone can join in. List: Plain language is access. Clear words welcome people in. Simpler isn't lesser. If it's easy to understand, it works.
So the second session that I was going to talk about here is a session that was actually led by museum professionals about plain language, which I think two of our other presenters have talked about that session. I probably saw you in there. This really stuck out as a session to me that was very interesting and helpful because it was coming from a museum and from folks that have experience with very, very technical language. And while theater can have some pretty technical language in the front of house space where I primarily work, I really felt like there could be some great opportunities to learn from the things that a museum was doing in a much more sort of intense language environment. So plain language is something that we've always sort of strived for, but there were a couple of things in this session that really stood out to me as things that are really valuable and useful to know. And the first one was that 40% of the United States adult population are not considered proficient readers, which was a number that I was really kind of astounded by. But that says a lot about what an audience that is coming into our space can do. So that statistic, just bringing that back to our organization and letting them know that, gave me the opportunity to do a signage review of our entire building over the course of this summer, trying to really pare down language, avoiding technical language. Another one of the things that we've been taking advantage of that was discussed in this session was the list of 1,000 most common used American English words. And if we're creating signage, we're now starting to reference that list to make certain that we're not using language that exceeds that and can really reach the broadest popular audience. There is a little bit, I've had a little bit of, I don't want to say pushback, but a little bit of pushback in wanting to still focus on using some of that technical language. And we often run into folks that don't understand, what is the house versus the auditorium versus the seating area. And so that is, something that we're having to kind of finesse with the different departments because other departments are, it's difficult to pull everybody in the same direction, but it's something that we're working towards. And another sort of thing that we're working on as a part of this is just a glossary of terms that we commonly use in our space and the plain language equivalents. At the Harris Theater, we work with a lot of outside companies. We have a lot of things that come into the space on a regular basis and then are out of the space very quickly. So being able to adjust sort of quickly in those situations is super helpful. So I think we can move on to the final slide here.
Title: The conference is only the beginning. List: Everyone wants to connect. Say hello in sessions and hallways. Follow up and stay in touch. Small conversations grow big ideas.
So the last thing that I wanted to talk about was just sort of the networking opportunities that this conference offers to you. I've met some really wonderful people. Funnily enough, a lot of them from the Chicago area, and sometimes you have to travel a bit to connect with the people that are just down the street from you. But there are really wonderful opportunities to connect with folks during sessions, after sessions. It starts, just even as soon as the breakfast in the morning, sitting down at a table with a bunch of people that you don't know, and the conversation starts, and all of a sudden you realize you're sitting with three people that are from an organization that's similar to yours, or sitting with people that have problems that are similar to yours. It really is just a wonderful opportunity to create sort of that community on a much larger scale. In the same breath, I'm also a person that really likes to decompress and take notes and have that time after a session to really kind of think about what we just talked about and explore those ideas. And there are also plenty of opportunities for that. I really think that this is just one of the most welcoming spaces that I've ever been a part of, and it sets a really great example for at least what I think we as the Harris Theater are trying to achieve in terms of welcoming folks into our space as well. And I think that there's one last slide. Yay, that's me. So thank you all. Thanks for listening. I'm the Audience and Access Services Manager at the Harris. Hopefully we see you out for a show, and I will pass it back to Alejandra.
Hi, this is Alejandra speaking. Thanks, Craig. Our last speaker today is Bill Green, who is a Cultural Access Collab co-chair.
Hi, thank you so much, Alejandra, and thank you so much to those speakers. This has been great to hear about LEAD, and I want to just double down on what Craig said about getting to meet great people and networking opportunities at LEAD. So I've been going to lead. This is my 4th year, and I want to talk a little bit about if anyone's interested in presenting, what it is to be a presenter, and kind of what opportunities are there as a presenter. I really enjoyed the opportunity to present, and I've had a great opportunity also to present with people across a lot of different institutions who maybe are similar to what I do or working with similar audiences, things like that. But if you are interested in presentations, they are currently accepting submissions until November 21st. The type of presentations that people can submit are an access lab. That's creating a topic and really creating a hands-on approach with something. For example, I've seen some great like using tactile objects in museums, people bringing those objects, giving opportunities for people to use them and think creatively how to use them and why to use them. Think tanks are taking a topic that you don't necessarily have all the answers to, but you want to use the great minds and the consideration that's at lead and open that up and have a discussion with the group. Panel presentations are a great way of working across other organizations that you're working maybe in a similar field, you're working with similar audiences, you have had initiatives. I run a program each month that works with people who have dementia, and I've presented with uh, the library out of Denver and a museum in Milwaukee and other groups on panels like this to talk about that same audience that we're working with. Um, Lightning talks are great. They're 15-minute talks about one subject. They're really great if there's that one thing you did in the last year and you're like, this was a project, a program, something that I did that I really want to share with people, but I know it's not a full session. Lightning talks are great. I participate in those. I always really enjoy doing those. And the capacity building workshops are a much longer, they're a full day or half day program. um, Something that's fun about capacity workshops is they take place before lead. So the primary conference is on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then that Monday, Tuesday beforehand is when those capacity workshops are happening. And a lot of them happen at cultural institutions in the city. So a couple of years ago, I presented, I was part of a capacity workshop. It was at Woodland Park Zoo in Seattle, and myself and staff from Woodland Park Zoo and the National Botanic Garden, we all hosted a workshop there, and we were able to use the zoo grounds, exhibits, interpretive signage in the workshop that we did. And those are great. And again, that's just a way to add on to your conference. Um, I I have also been on the end of having the chance to review submissions for presentations. And I just, if you're thinking about that, I want you to think about 3 things I have here. Be collaborative. Think about those other organizations that are doing things that you want to share with. It's great to see more than one organization present together. It's especially great. I love today our presenters. We have folks working in dance and film and music. It's great to see people working across those types of institutions too, to see zoos and museums working together, not just the exact same cultural institutions being together. Be creative. Uh, think about things that are um, unique that you have done, creative things that you've done. People love to hear the new thing that you've done, the thing that you have discovered, the piece of programming, the interpretive signage, whatever it is that really sets apart your accessibility programming. And then be challenging. Think about first, the audience at lead isn't just people who are brand new. You can be challenging and create tough subjects that people can deal with. You can also challenge yourself. Maybe you don't have all the answers and you want to create that think tank where you can bring something you're interested in and work that out with people. Um, so be that challenging. Again, if anybody has questions, I'd love to answer, talk about that here or otherwise about what it is to present, what makes a good submission, things like that. I would highly encourage you to. And again, I hope to see you in Philadelphia at Lead. And I will pass it back to Alejandra.
Hi, this is Alejandra. Thanks, Bill, and thanks to all of our speakers who presented today. I'd love to invite you all to stay with us for the live Q&A right now. And feel free to continue submitting questions. Our Q&A function is live, so if you have a question that you were inspired by for some of the speakers and it's just come into your mind right now, feel free to submit that and we will probably be able to get to it. To start off our Q&A, somebody had a question saying, how does the box office note that a patron may have access needs? What if someone else is making the reservation? Are all patrons asked by phone or if booking online if they have someone who may have access needs in their group?
Craig McNabb.
That sounds like a question for me. Yeah, so our box office team, I actually don't directly oversee our box office team, but work pretty closely with our box office treasurer. What they are doing when they get a phone call is typically most of our sales are being done online. So we have a purchase pathway where folks can select accessible seats through that path. But we do also have the box office available for phone calls, and they're all trained to take in those access requests. We use Tessitura as our customer, our CRM. So we note those with tags on each of those patron profiles if they come in and then they request a service. And then sort of like the backside of that and what we're implementing in terms of completing that loop is what we're collecting in the house is if somebody is in a seat that doesn't have an access need, we're collecting that information and then also tagging that and communicating, working through Tessitura so that if that patron purchases a ticket on that path, it pops up again. If they're not purchasing their own tickets, there are some folks that are just going to, if they don't request the service and if somebody else buys the tickets and doesn't purchase, in that case, we would be prepared to assist them in the space and then hopefully capture that seating change in the house in real time and then can be tagged and solve it later on in the future. We're still in the early stages of implementing that portion of it. So we're interested to see how it's going to sort of play out and whether or not this ends up being a long-term solution, but we're very encouraged by the sort of early signs in it.
Thanks, Craig. And I'm going to invite all of our speakers to just be on camera in case anyone has any insight into any of the questions. So all of you are free to answer. The next question I have is, what advice do you have for how to advocate for staff training around accessibility at our organizations?
All speakers appear in a grid pattern.
I can dive in again, I guess. If anybody else has anything, please cut me off. But I fortunately have, I think, walked into a situation at the Harris where Hillary Pearson, who I'm sure some of you know, was the director of operations at our theater previously, and really set us up with a wonderful vision for accessibility and keeping those things at the forefront. I think that the main thing in terms of like maintaining that as she's left our organization and been gone for a while is just kind of continuing to keep the pressure and hound that this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to update. I feel like I'm doing a lot of like asking for forgiveness instead of asking for permission, and really like trying to go in harder on our access services training and find more and new ways to implement those things. And oftentimes I find that the organization is excited about those things if you just go for it. Sometimes just diving in is the key for us, at least.
This is Bill. I'll just add real quick. Accessibility training goes great hand in hand with any customer service or safety trainings. Also, it should just be a standard part of those. So if you can fit them in to that existing training, it's a great way to, I guess, have those trainings be more complete and comprehensive rather than thinking I have to justify a whole separate accessibility training.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, ours is paired with our emergency and evacuation training, and there's a lot of overlap between those two things as well.
Hi, this is Chile. I can speak from a film industry, film production perspective. Highly encourage folks to look, if you're working in film, Indivisible Entertainment. They actually have a film production training program where they train producers. For those of you who don't know, they are the wranglers of all film production, essentially, and providing the building blocks to ensure that sets are accessible, ensuring that your finances are carving out accessibility contingencies for any actors or crew who might have access needs, to even thinking about dietary restrictions or ensuring that the food that you're bringing on set is in consideration, to even thinking about lowering how many hours people are on set. Oftentimes people are on set for 14, 16 hours. That is not sustainable. That's not sustainable for me. How could that be sustainable for other people? And so from a production standpoint, that they would be one group or entertainment industry to consider. There's also Bluebird Post, which works under Full Spectrum Features. They more specialize on captioning and audio description from a culturally nuanced perspective. So if you are showing media in your museum, or if you are wanting to develop captions and audio description for your dance, for example, or a film for that instance, they have specific partnerships and shadowing opportunities to learn what does it mean to think about who is not only writing the audio description of a piece, but also thinking about who's recording and speaking this audio description. So that way the vernacular is reflective of the people that is speaking it, experiencing it in the film, but also from the audience. So there are different ways. Unfortunately, there's not all encompassing because film is very complex and has different areas and departments for that matter. But I think Indivisible Entertainment and Full Spectrum Features, for example, are solid places to start for those who are interested.
Thanks, everyone. And not a question, but a comment in the chat from Margaret Gonzalez requesting to share their experience at LEAD this year. So, Margaret, if you wanted to unmute or put your video on, we'd be happy to hear from you.
Sure, I'm trying to turn the video on, but it's not letting me, but it's okay. So my name is Margaret Gonzalez. I'm the communications coordinator at Illinois Arts Council. I can describe myself, but you can't see me, but I'm going to say that I'm an Afro-Cuban American middle-aged woman wearing clear frame glasses and a beige t-shirt that says Brunch Society. So it was my first time at the LEAD conference, and it was an impactful one. I learned so much about accessibility, particularly when it comes to communication. So I attended a lot of those like sessions and workshops, and that was very helpful to me in what I do professionally at the IAC. But the thing that struck me the most meaningful chord for me was meeting so many people who have a disability and seeing their sheer courageousness as they navigate in this world. I was absolutely just gobsmacked and just so proud and just, I don't know, very inspired. And I was delighted to meet all the people from the Illinois contingent and learn about what they do in regards to accessibility. So I did get to meet Chile, and I met Diamond, and we were eating our lunch, and it was super cute. LEAD is a wonderful experience in the way that it's set up. The sessions and workshops are very informative and so many times eye-opening when speakers and audience members would speak about their personal experiences. The sessions are structured in a way that one can listen and or participate in multiple breakout rooms. And there were so many topics that were offered. And just as a side note, I have pride to say that one of our speakers at the conference, it was Dr. Tina Gonzalez Childress, and she's an IAC council member. And seeing her speak on multiple topics in different sessions made me so proud and made me feel like personally I have to do better. And just because of my association with Tina. So I brought it home for me and it made it very personal. And that's what I have to share. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret. This is Alejandra speaking. And for those of you not familiar, the IAC stands for the Illinois Arts Council. I'm going to go to maybe one more question before we kind of wrap up for the day. Let's see. What are some best practices for balancing plain language against scientific or technical language or vocab in an education setting? So thinking about museums, zoos, and other organizations.
Hi, this is Chile speaking. I think it's a non-answer, but I think what's really important is who are you writing for? Who is your audience is an important question to ask yourself when considering plain language. I think in this case through LEAD, but also because not everyone, but a big majority of people who are attending LEAD are working in like museums, maybe galleries, for example, or artists themselves. And in my case, film, these are public facing spaces, right? And so therefore you can't really control who is entering and flowing through these spaces. Whereas if you're writing for a scientific journal, you can expect that your audience are potentially scientists or folks who are trained or studied in that field study. In this case, I think what's a huge challenge for science, for example, or speaking in jargon, is letting go of that expectation and really reframing the language in a way that is digestible. I forgot the name of this series that I think it's a really good example if you're someone who learns through watching videos. There's a series on YouTube where they bring in different scientists to explain concepts to a toddler, a young person, to like a high school student, to a college student, to someone who's specifically studying in that field. And I think that series is a perfect example of how one can communicate a complex topic to a specific audience member. I guess in this case, that YouTube series, the plain language example works really well for the toddler person, the one who's a young person and the one who's in high school. I think that's a really great framework. But I think at the end of the day, thinking about who is your audience and how can you adapt the language so that way they can digest that information, knowing that they might have no context whatsoever of that field.
Thanks, Chile. And I wonder for the other speakers today, this can be used in variety of contexts. I know folks are speaking to their experience kind of juggling between that plain language and maybe theater language, plain language and maybe dance terminology. So if anyone else has any other insight into that question, we'd love to hear.
Hi, this is Bill. I can just say real quick that sometimes using the scientific language, like if you say orangutans do arboreal clambering, it's also nice to throw in the definition of that. That means they like to go through treetops with their arms wide and swinging, and so that can be. I always think of. I love when I see kids at Lincoln Park Zoo reading our signs, and they're at the age where they're learning how to read, and so that's an audience we have to think of. We want those signs to be accessible to that kid who's learning how to read, and but also we're able to throw in some scientific concepts and some concepts about climate change and conservation that are maybe above grade level, but we put it in a way that's at grade level, language wise. So yeah.
The panel ends.
All right, thanks, Bill. I know that we're running out of time, but I want to thank all of our speakers who shared their experience with LEAD today. And thank everyone for joining us today. Before we leave, I want to do some quick plugs for some upcoming CAC Collab events. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Next slide.
So we hope you can join us in Champaign-Urbana. One State in the Arts and Humanities is a statewide convening of our arts, culture, and humanities professionals in Illinois. Join a diverse network of organizations from across the state for a convening designed to help participants make connections, develop skills, spark new ideas, and catalyze a vibrant, resilient vision for Illinois' arts and humanities ecosystem. This conference's theme is Meeting the Moment. The conference is November 5th through 7th, and registration is still open. Collab members will be presenting an Access 101 session, and you can find the link to learn more in the chat. Can you go to the next slide, please? And tomorrow, we hope you're able to join us tomorrow for our 12th annual Collab fundraiser, Collab with Us. Tomorrow, October 17th, we'll be at the National Public Housing Museum at 919 South Ada Street, Chicago, Illinois, from 6 to 9 p.m. We'll be joined by comedians KT Zane and Ben Noble for a night of laughs and snacks in support of the Collab's programming. Tickets are $75 and can be purchased using the QR code on screen or at the door tomorrow. We hope that you're able to join us. And can you go to the next slide, please? All right, and please check out the QR code on the bottom to find resources related to this program and to consider making a small donation to support the mission of the Cultural Access Collab. Even just $5 will help make our work sustainable into the future. At this time, we'll be bringing today's program to a close. We'd like to thank all of our presenters again for sharing. In the chat, you'll find a link to our feedback survey, which we invite you to complete. Thanks also to our accessibility service providers. Captioning was provided by Heather Trainer with efficiency reporting. ASL interpretation was provided by Kelly Greer with first choice interpreting, and Havala Tiemann. Thank you all. And thank you all to the Collab production team, and mostly thank you all for joining and offering your support to the Cultural Access Collaborative. We hope to see you at our fundraiser tomorrow, and thank you again for joining us.
Credits appear. Lead Conference ShareOut 2025, presented by Cultural Access Collaborative. For workshop resources and more information, visit culturalaccesscollab.org. Presenting speakers: Alejandra Rodriguez, CAC, Moderator; Chile Ochoa, Community Impact and Strategy Manager, Forward Doc; Diamond Warren Tucker, Program Manager at Joel Hall Dancers and Center; Bill Green, Hart Prins Fund Manager of Accessibility and Inclusion, Lincoln Park Zoo; Craig McNabb, Audience and Access Services Manager, Harris Theater for Music and Dance. Workshop Accessibility: Real-Time Captioning by Heather Trainer with Efficiency Reporting. ASL Interpretation by Havala Tiemann and Kelly Greer with First Choice Interpreting. Video Editing, Captioning, and Audio Description by BridgetMelton.com.